Wow. All in order. Inaugural 2025 meeting of the Coeur d'Alene Airport Advisory Board. Roll call to see who's here. We've got Patrick O'Halloran, Bill Cummings, Jim Crawford, Tim, and I believe Brian is on vacation. I talked to him previously. He wasn't going to be here this month. I go Dale, Frank O'Connell, Ross Schotthauer, Dale Givney, and Sandra. Right?
Yes.
So we get 8 out of 9. We do have a quorum. So with that, I just ask everybody, if you haven't done it, silence your cell phone so we don't get any calls in your routines. And with that, we'll go to item 2, pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3, full award for the conflicts of interest. Noted. 4, changes to the agenda. I don't have any. Anybody else does either? Item 5, I'll open it for the first period of public comment. And for anybody who wants to do a public comment, I would ask that you come forward so that we can record you properly. If there's anybody who'd like to. It doesn't appear there anybody that is. Item 6, approve minutes of the previous meeting. Somebody like to make a motion on
I
that?
move we approve those.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 7, staff reports. Judith, I'm looking for Kareem.
So I'm Mac, I'm with Alder, I'm standing in for Corey today. If we have any questions that we specifically want Corey to respond to, I can just write it down, get back to an email. We don't really have many updates besides the status report. A couple to speak on for the Taxiway Charlie project. I am currently coordinating with the contractor of Vista and Zipley to go and try to get some utility work out of the way in February before we do the bulk of our work starting in May, mid-May, around May 15th. Moving on to the ARF equipment procurement. So yesterday we did not receive any bids, which is unfortunate. So that means that the next step is to go and meet with the FAA and determine what we're doing going forward. That's more in Corey's realm of things. And if Gaston has anything on that, we can go and talk about that later. In terms of the Taxiway Alpha rehabilitation design project, we are currently negotiating contract stuff, so no forward progress has been made on that. We were able to go and complete the wildlife hazard mitigation training. So that's one of the on-call tasks that we've taken care of and checked off. In terms of the air traffic control tower staffing request, Corey told me that that is currently in draft form. So that is essentially completed and waited for some review and comments. Besides that, with the federal contract tower application, there's no new updates on that. That's about it. Do we have any questions involved with the status report?
I can make a comment on the ARF truck, just for clarification. Basically, we've been moving through this process for the past 6 months or so in the procurement of a new ARF truck, a new Index A truck. One of the issues that obviously we received no bids, every company pulled specs on it. We had, I think, 3 or 4 different companies pull specs, as the specs, but no bids came through, which is kind of interesting. So we reached out to those companies to understand why no bids came through, and it was that most of the companies do not produce Index A trucks anymore. So it's like the smaller, think of like a brush truck for a normal farm, that's about the size of an Index A truck. They will not replace our ARF truck with the existing size. So we actually have an Index B truck now, even though we're an Index A airport, because our fleet, basically we would have to have scheduled service coming in here in an aircraft that warrants an Index B truck to be able to get another Index B truck from the FAA. At the time that one was procured back in the early 2000s, we had that mix, we met that mix to get the B truck. There are still a couple companies that build Index A trucks. The issue was more of a timeline. In the contract, we gave 2 years to deliver, which has been more than enough time to deliver a vehicle. They said that they're upwards of 3 years out now to deliver one, that they're not getting chassis. So everything has to be American made. Ford and Dodge are not getting these companies, apparatus companies, trucks until 12 to 24 month period, just for them to get the chassis and take another 6 to 8 months to build the truck. So unless they see a contract comes out that gives them 36 months to deliver to us, they won't even touch it. So we have a meeting on Friday with the FAA. It's likely going to be us extending those periods and going to rebid the truck again. I'm going to talk to them about some other options as well, depending on costs and everything. But we really went to fight hard to get another Index B truck, but we already went through the process through regional to get a variance, basically. Like, we've had this 1,500 gallon truck, we've had an Index B truck this whole time. We'd like to replace it with like equipment. And even at a regional level, we were shot down on that. So the FAA will only pay for an Index A. They won't let us cover the cost difference. So I said, fund what an Index A would be, and we'll pay the bridge to get us to a B, and they won't entertain that. It has to be that equipment. So the FAA will purchase this vehicle. They'll keep us in compliance. There are future projects that will allow us to look at another Index B truck, or if not an Index C. In all reality, for the types of aircraft that land here, even our Index B truck could be considered smaller with only 1,500 gallons on board. I would like to have a C truck that has 3,000 gallons of water on board for a lot of these bigger aircraft, especially the fire tankers that operate in and out of here. So something we're working on, but the fact that Index A apparatuses are being phased out, I would say in another 5 years, there won't be any companies building those for airports, and the FAA is going to have to redo the requirements, and we would be an Index B airport, then they would call us that, and those would be the smallest trucks. But we will retain and keep our current ARF truck until, yes, we're going to keep our existing ARF truck until it can be replaced with something like size, even with the new ARF truck. I don't want to take us backwards in safety. I mean, a true Index A truck only has 300 gallons of water on board. So it's like 2 minutes of firefighting and we're refilling it. So
How many gallons in the spec
300 gallons. Yeah.
that went out? The bid was for 300 gallons.
Yep, 300 gallons. Index A is 300 gallons, 1,500 gallons goes to Index B, then 3,000 gallons for the C truck. So, yeah, we're probably, an apparatus like we're gonna get anywhere from kind of 250 to 500 mark as far as cost. So once again, that's all, 95% of it is funded by the FAA, 2.5% by the state. We only have to cover 2.5% of that cost locally, which is nice. Typical Index B trucks to what we have are right around the $1 million mark. To go from an Index B to a C is not that much additional cost, because you're actually only adding an axle and a bigger water tank. It all has the same engine, transmission, everything else. You're about 1.1 to 1.2 for a 3,000 gallon truck. So if we're going to make that jump to get another B truck, looking at a C to have more capability. So I'll keep you guys tuned on what's going on, but
What'll be the service life of that when it does get delivered?
they're supposed to only be 7 years. Every 7 years, you're supposed to get a new truck. So we're well over double, almost triple that right now with our current truck. Our trucks, yeah, it needs some relief. It's a maintenance issue throughout the year. So,
I'm surprised they haven't revised that standard over the years, considering the quality of equipment.
And it comes down directly, not just to the size of the aircraft, because one could argue we have, 737s and the MD-87s, firefighting aircraft in here, and they're like, well, there's no people on them, there's a pilot and co-pilot. Like, it has to be a scheduled airline with 200 people on board in that class of aircraft to step into the next category with our ARF. So.
What's the city fire department that's using our facilities now they're still using
They're
it?
still housed out there. Yep.
And who is that?
Northern Lakes.
And is there any
movement on them staying in there once their other facility is built or not?
They would like to, there's no official movement yet. When their station is finished up on Garwood, they will move that apparatus and crew up to Garwood as Station 3. They would like to maintain a presence on the airport, and their goal would be to have a heavy rescue station on the airport. So it'd be more of the technical rescue. They would have a ladder here, they would have a heavy rescue truck for Northern Lakes purposes and personnel, but nothing officially has been moved on that yet.
Yes, you can just keep right on going into your update.
Yeah, nothing too much more to update on my side. The gate system, I'd say is about 98% complete as far as the cut over to the new Verkada system. As far as that goes, everything's working out pretty well. Everyone's pretty much cut over onto the app. Snow equipment wise, everything's working pretty well. We had our second event this morning, so guys got out there and got it done pretty well. And other than that, just kind of working through our winter planning projects for the most part. It's kind of a slow season as far as operations.
And when we talked about as far as the North Side Committee, you folks would be up to,
We were looking to have a January meeting, so there were some answers coming in from the Forest Service and different developers on the north side through the month of December, so we were gonna have a meeting in January to go over everything. We're just waiting to have some more data come in. Yeah, so I'll have something to report on the February meeting.
any questions? Portland Airport Association?
Yeah, Jim Walsh, Airport Association. Really don't have much to update you guys on, but the one subject that's ongoing, of course, is the noise ordinance issues that have arose. So we're in a process of putting a small committee together now that the holidays are completed. Myself with Gaston and a few others who I won't disclose at this point. And we have a set plan to present at some point to the advisory board. No-fly zones, graphics, overlays, things like that. I think I don't want to go into too much detail at this point, Gas, right? We're still discussing, a lot of things associated with that noise issue. But I wanted to assure you guys that it's not a dead issue. It's still festering with us, so we want to resolve it and give you guys a good presentation for approval. So that's where we're heading forward. So hopefully, I would say I don't know, guess by next meeting, maybe.
Yeah, we would like to have something.
That's the goal.
Yeah, in February.
For February.
We want to be able to roll out the new column policies and recommendations well before the new next flying season here. Get in the spring season.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Moving on to business. Item A, introduce new airport advisory board members. For anybody that isn't aware, both Steve Anderson and Mike Hankowski's terms expired at the end of 2024. And both of them decided that they did not want to extend their participation on the board, so they stepped down. And we had applications made to the Board of County Commissioners, and we have two new members to welcome, two new alternate members, Patrick O'Halloran and Phil Cummings. And I would ask each of them to introduce themselves for.
Thank you. And pleasure to be here. Nice to be asked. I'm more of a stranger around the airport these days. I was formerly the aerospace director from Idaho College when we had that. That's an over a beer conversation someday for somebody.
I'm interested.
Yeah, I might be why I'm here. Longer career, retired Air Force throughout that industry. I'm still with NIC. I'm downtown now. I did work after the aerospace thing and for a short time ran the trades programs throughout Lancaster. In recent months, I transitioned to main campus. I'm a veterans advisor now. So pleasure to be here. Look forward to learning and relearning a bit. And
Phil, of course, needs no introduction.
Yeah.
We'll let him do it anyway.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Phil Cummings. I've operated public airports for 38 years, this one for 30, including this second time I came back for 18 months. I figure after 38 years, I might have something interesting to say at one of the meetings, so that's why I thought I'd be on. I'm concerned about the airport's future with the growth in the county, and an airport responds to the growth. And it's been difficult for the airport to grow. Things are closing in. And as a taxpayer, I'm concerned about that. And I would like to see, make sure that the airport stays going in the direction gas is taking.
Thanks, Phil. And with the change, of course, both Phil and Patrick came on as alternates. We have a 9-member board, but 2 members are alternates. So the 2 alternates, we're alternates, so Sean Howard and Givney are now full-fledged voting members. So.
We take off their training wheels.
We get those.
Yeah, I guess we'll have some comments about that. Agenda item C. Okay, brings me to item B, nomination, election of airport advisory board officers, only 2, chairman and the vice chairman. I've been the chairman for the last year. And it's been fun. I mean, I've enjoyed doing it. But, you know, one thing that Brian said last year was maybe you guys should only do this for a year at a time. And I think really that's not a bad idea. So if there's anybody else that's interested in doing this, you know, please feel free to raise your hand. It's not a difficult job. You know, there's only 3 things you really do. You run the meetings, hopefully well. You set the agenda. It has to be sent into the county and sent out to everybody. And then if the county commissioners ask on their status update for an update, and march downtown with gas and tell them what the last meeting was about, so they always read the minutes. And one last benefit is you get, you know, to use the bully pulpit a little bit, which the guy wants to be really careful to exercise, but that's really about all there is to it. Otherwise, it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. And I don't think it's really a bad idea for us to swap it around annually. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it again if I'm nominated, but on the other hand, if somebody else would like to take it on, be my guest. So with that, I'll call for nominations.
I nominate you, Frank.
Do we have any others? Do we have any volunteers? Dale, Ross, Simon.
Well, you know, we've been watching and we just, some of us, we all kind of agree, you're just about to catch on.
Well, I'm from Butte, Montana, so I got a bit of that Irish morning on for me, well, man, I say. Seriously, if there's anybody else who'd like to do it, if you guys can't do it, that's our next agenda item.
We really would like to.
Okay, well. Somebody, you already seconded it?
I second
That's
it.
right, okay.
He did.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? I guess I'll do it. All right. Let's move on to item C. And this is one that Gaston and I discussed after the last.
Mr. Chairman, just a second. I think we have to have another nomination for.
Oh, vice chair. I'm sorry. You need to have a vice chair.
Can't do
Okay,
it.
Larry Goodell.
I don't think I can do it.
You probably won't have to anyway, so it's fairly ceremonial, but there may be times I'm not here. Awesome. If you captain the Carolina, I think you can do this.
Okay,
I'll do it. Okay.
all right. I nominate you.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations. Steve never had that. I'm sorry, I forgot all about that. Jumping back to item C, this is one that came up again, in conversation between Gaston and I at the last Board of County Commissioners meeting. We kind of went in circles a little bit on bringing new members onto the board, because there was a bit of a debate about, okay, we've got a 9-member board with 7 voting members and 2 alternates. And if my knowledge history serves me correctly, and Phil, you can correct me on this used to be a 9-member voting board.
Correct.
And at some point it was changed. I don't know why.
They thought it was too cumbersome with 9 voting members.
Oh, okay. At any rate, I think it's kind of worked out opposite. I think it's more cumbersome having alternates. I'm going to tell you why. Number one, it's an advisory board. So when you get right down to it, for the most part, we're really kind of a debating society. We can talk about things, we can come up with resolutions, we can go to the county commissioners and say, you know, we think you ought to do this, but we really do not have any authority beyond advice. So in terms of there needing to be a distinction between an alternate and a voting member, I really don't see the benefit of it. If this was a governing board, I could understand that, because then you could bring people on and you could say, okay, we're making weighty decisions like Spokane, their airport board deals with $110 million budget, something like that. You know, so you definitely want to give somebody some time to come up to speed, learn the ropes before you've got them in there making, you know, consequential decisions. The other thing is, I feel like all the members that we have on this board have a wealth of aeronautical experience. You know, I, for one, would not deign to put myself above just about anybody else on this board in terms of knowledge of an airport or aeronautics or anything like that. So I think we've got a wealth of expertise that I don't see any point saying this is a training position, and once you learn it, you know, then you can be a voting member. And the third item that really I have a difficult time with is the issue around quorum. Technically, for us to have a quorum in this meeting, we've got to have 4 of the 7 voting members present in order to vote on anything. But for purposes of the quorum, and I don't know why legal does this, they've said that an alternate's just as good as a voting member when we're outside of this room in terms of the quorum. So you could have open meeting law violations inadvertently done because, no, it is. Like Jonathan and I have had this discussion many times. So I look at that and say, well, why don't we just make it 9 voting members? That way a quorum is a quorum. There's no differentiation when we vote. Leslie made a comment that I had allowed somebody to introduce a motion in a meeting. It was an alternate, and I shouldn't have done that. I don't quite frankly recall if that was exactly the case or not, but I thought, you know, all it's done so far, I think, is create confusion. So I am of the opinion, I'd like to go to the county commissioners and say, look, it used to be 9 members, it worked well that way. We went down to this alternate system. It presented confusion to them. You know, like, okay, we've got to appoint some new people to the board. Do we take, you know, somebody like Patrick, for example, and make him a voting member like they did, you know, when I first came on the board? You know, we had some people that had no experience in aviation to be voting members, and I had some experience and I was an alternate. Or do we just populate the alternate position, and then when a voting position comes up, then we make them a voting member? I think it would just be easier for all concerned. I know it'd be easier for you, Jonathan, if we would just dispense with the alternates and have everybody as a voting.
I couldn't agree with you.
Frank,
You need to rewrite the bylaws.
well, that's my question to Jonathan would be, is that a county thing to have alternates?
So the fair board has alternates. And-
We're not the fair.
Yeah.
But
So I'm just saying, we have 11 advisory boards now. We do have alternates for other boards. Again, you know, it's the Board of County Commissioners' discretion, how they want the bylaws set up. If you guys want to bring it forward to the board, and, you know, I think the board is always open to a very logical layout explanation, and we'll see what they say. That's what I would say.
Well, I guess that's my question is that something within the county's bylaw? I don't care about the other meetings. Did the county set it up so the advisory boards have to have alternates?
So they set up for the specific bylaws for the airport advisory.
Correct.
They approved the airport bylaws, and they the ones that directed that we have 2 alternates added onto the board. We made every board 7. The county commissioners originally made every board 7 because they wanted everything universal. It was annoying to have 9, 11 on this board. So now they're down to 7 on every board except for now the airport inspector. So that's where they're. But again, with the county commissioners, they can always change. A new county commissioner comes on, and everything changes.
That's my question. My comment to you, to the board, would be to have 2 alternates on this board disadvantages the rest of you from a voting perspective. So really, we're not helping you, we're hurting.
Well, and as I said, it creates issues with the quorum, and that comes down to legal, because then you're always concerned about, well, you know, let's say that we're at a social event together, and there's you, Tim, Larry, and me. Well, are we a quorum or not? Technically not, because there's only 3 voting members, but for purposes of the open meeting law, we can get nailed on a violation for having
yes and no.
Well,
That interpretation has been misrepresented at this airport board for many years. It depends on the event and what's being discussed. Now, the proposal like Stancraft did, I agree. But there are some things that participation board members wanted to do over the years and were not allowed to because, and it was a social event. Nobody was trying to sell anything to the airport board or gain an advantage. So be careful when you say that in some of these gatherings, because the county has misrepresented that for years.
What about the example of the town hall just recently?
exactly. I think county legal default position is no matter what, if you have X number of people there, we're gonna call it a violation of the open meeting law, so that way nobody can come back and work with us. I think that's the way they look at it.
I can kind of speak to that a little bit. You can go to, say you go into church together, it's not an open meeting violation. You can go to breakfast together technically. It might look bad, because there's the eye of the law and the eye of what the public sees. And legal, when there is a case law established, legal's gonna pick the abundance of caution route for sure, because there's nothing that has been established about alternates. That's what legal is explained to me. So that's kind of their context to this. So that's I'm just surrounding, that's their kind of their background on it. But you could technically go to, church together, and it's not an open meeting law violation. I think in the town hall, they felt like it was information that could relate to leading to a decision, which then therefore, there was a quorum, which means it's open meeting law. That was what they were going with.
Well, but I guess what I'm saying is regardless, when you have an alternate within the group, it is not a quorum by any stretch of the imagination. Yet we are held to a double standard. And I just say to obviate the problem, just make it a 9-member voting board. I think we have good competent people on board. We're advisory only. So we have no governance over Gaston or the county, or any conduct at this airport. But in terms of logistics, it just makes the mechanics of having these meetings and being a board much easier. That's what then we're not down there talking to a lawyer, said, well, we went to breakfast together, was that a quorum violation? Or we went to a Coeur d'Alene Airport Association meeting together, is that a violation of the board? Even though Phil at this point is only an alternate, there's still 3 of us, quorum technically for us is 4 voting members. It just, it puts us in a position of, because legal wants to exercise an abundance of caution, and God, why don't we better do it too? And I just find it needless to deal with that, given the circumstances of this board. If it were a governing board, if we had control over taxpayer funds, it would make more sense to me. Even then, I still don't agree with it, because you have alternates that cannot vote. And I'm sure that, the commissioners perhaps may feel differently, but I wanted to poll this board to see how they felt about it. Maybe go to the commissioners and say, hey, we'd like to be 9 voting members and we dispense with this. It's never an issue because we remove it. Otherwise, it's always a little bit of a risk.
Correct. One of the differences, the commissioners are always saying, well, we have 16 departments. No. Excuse me. You have 15 departments in an airport. This airport, you cannot compare to any other department in the county. And come budget time, and they always hate me going to budget meetings, because we are the only department the county has that generates employment revenue into the community to the tune of $30 to $50 million. That alone changes the dynamics of how we are. So you trying to justify to the board going to a 9-member voting advisory board, I think you have every right to. We are different. This is not like the building department or park and rec or something else. It's totally different. So.
Well, I think something else needs to be considered too. If you look at it logically, this is the largest asset the county has.
Yes.
So it differentiates itself that way, or our functionality is, what do I want to say this? It's so much wider. In the sense that, okay, if we look at the sewer district, they basically have one function, collect sewage, they process, put it back in the river. If we look at Parks Department, kind of the same thing, you have a single function. Airport, we have our hands in a little bit of everything out here. But even with that, like I said, I just look at the logistics of it and say, you know, it's just kind of a pain in the neck. We really rather not. You know, if we know we have a 9-member board, we know a quorum is 5, and anytime there's 5 of us together, then we're gonna have to, you know, we're gonna have to go by the rules without any question, you know, because we're together in a common place. Somebody may look at us and say, aha, you're in violation of the open meeting law, and whether we are or not is strictly a matter of debate, but it still puts us in a position to have to go through the cure process, which necessitates dragging all of us together to have a meeting, apologize for doing it. I just rather not have to do that when we don't.
Well, where do we go from there? I mean, I think, I'm not seeing any objection.
I would say we just make a motion to send a resolution to the county commissioners if they take it back to 9-member.
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah.
would just suggest that you put it on for an agenda item for next meeting. Since we kind of got, this was related to one item, but it kind of got off a little bit, I would recommend to put it on for next week on as agenda item and you make a formal motion action on it. Unless,
Well, this has got action associated with it. We can make the motion.
I would just encourage, have bylaws, change your bylaws as an agenda item, action, just.
Well,
It takes a number of meetings to do that.
oh, wait a minute. Well, who's in charge of the bylaws? My understanding is it's the BOCC, not us.
Yes.
So we make a resolution, they change the bylaws, that should take care of it, correct?
But I would just say, since you're gonna bring a recommendation to the board,
Mhm.
it should be an agenda item. That would just be that's what I would.
Isn't that what that is right now?
Yeah, I'm confused.
Well, I would just say the bylaws is not on the agenda.
Yeah, I don't see the word bylaw
Oh,
anywhere on
okay.
the agenda.
I would just encourage to put it on for next week.
In other words, you're
next
saying
month.
technically it's a formality we have to go through.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what we'll do.
Sure.
Okay, last item, input on agenda items for the next meeting. I'll need to have them to me by February the 5th. Well, we got that one. Those are gonna be in there. And let's see, let me give this to everybody because I'm sure people don't know how to get a hold of me. I will take care of that for you right now. My account is FOAABKCOE, which stands for Frank O'Connell Airport Advisory Board, KCOE@gmail.com. So if you think of something and spur of the moment, you think it might be a worthwhile agenda item, put it on an email, send it to me.
Is that a change?
For the email address I had.
It's on the one we got in the email today.
There you go, that's the same one.
Okay.
I don't know if everybody had that. I hadn't done that before and I'd never gotten any messages from anybody, so I thought, you better let everybody know how to get a hold of me, nobody tried to call me. But that's gonna be something that is always the week before the scheduled meeting, so I have time to do the agenda up. I gotta get it to Jonathan, he's gotta do it up, send it back to me, and then we have to publish it for, what is it, 48 hours? And, you know, with that, then, you know, it's an official agenda. Okay, last item on the list, attend public comment. Second phase of that. Anybody has anything they'd like to get up and say?
I had
Come on up. Identify yourself.
I'm Josh. I just had a question. So the FAA did an airport light inspection this week, and they said that there was multiple lights on runway 6 ALS that were discrepanт. I was just kind of wondering what the status on that was and what's the path going forward to make them no longer compliant.
That's the Mauser system, which is FAA owned and operated and maintained. So yeah, yesterday the FAA came through and did our flight check to check our reels that we put in on runway 24 with our runway rehabilitation project and the reels, the LED reels we just installed on runway 2. With that, I guess in the mix, they also checked their equipment on the Mauser, and the Mauser had multiple bulbs out, which had, that's a constant thing with that. They're old incandescent bulbs. The FAA is in the process of doing an upgrade project on their own to upgrade the Mauser.
What is it?
Do what?
Mauser, what is it?
The Mauser's the light tree off the end of runway
The
6.
rabbit coming
The
out.
Oh, rabbit.
Yes, you have
Okay.
the strobes, then you have the light trees after that. That's all the Mauser system. We have the steady burn. The steady burn lights, those things, especially in the colder temperatures when it fluctuates, they die all the time. So earlier that morning, before, there was only one of them out. By the time that evening, the flight check airplane came through, there were 6 of them out. So they failed their own system. So it wasn't anything, we're not allowed to touch it. Sometimes the FAA will leave us with a few bolts to be able to throw them in because they do burn out. Like, you would have to have a guy here every morning changing those bolts. So it's nothing bad on the airport. It doesn't affect anything. They'll probably note it out of service because it lost a certain amount of bulbs, and they'll have to have their tech ops come out and screw the bolts in and leave us another release of bulbs. So.
How do
it's,
they verify those are working? They have to fly approach in to see if.
So they check them for their aim more than anything, functionality and aim. We check them just to make sure that they're on during our city. Even though they're not our asset to inspect, we still inspect it, and then we'll call it in. As soon as we see bulbs out, we'll call tech ops and do the actual official notification, and they have to send guys out. Like I said, they do leave us with bulbs to be able to swap them out, so they don't have to make a trip from Spokane here every day to put bulbs in it. But there are new systems out that are LED. Surprisingly enough, we're not enough in the Arctic climate to warrant a heated LED system. So they don't like to put the LED ones back in here. They still install incandescent systems with the entire airport going LED. Yep, they'll do incandescent. So that's something that I'm gonna work with the FAA on and tell them that I will pay the difference in getting nice LED heated ones in here, so we don't have an issue ever on here. So
They can still get incandescent lights.
that's the issue. They can't. They're actually, more often than not, they will, they'll note them the valves are out of service and say we're waiting for bulbs to come in. They're just like a par 36, par 43 bulb. Like, it is the most standard floodlight bulb that like you put at your house. Like those things. So.
Now, looking at the approach plate, does that change the minimums? That's out?
Oh, yeah, I believe so. Yep.
Out in a few bulbs is different though.
Yes, it has to do with a certain percentage being out. I believe it's when it hits 10% out, it has to be noted out of service. And then we're not allowed to file notice on their system. It's completely owned, operated, maintained by them. It's kind of a luxury that they let us have bolts, even screw bolts in every now and again, so.
It hasn't been upgraded since 1972 when it was put in.
Yeah. So as part of this taxiway Charlie project is to finally fix the discrepancy in how the threshold part of the Mauser, the threshold bar is actually behind our, behind our threshold lights for the runway lights. It's supposed to be the other way around. So they're gonna halfway fix the Mauser for themselves during that. That's all FAA funded. But hopefully in the near future, we get an actual LED Mauser, because like I said, eventually I'm gonna have the whole airport LED, and that'll be the last piece that'll stay that way. So essentially, we passed no problem. They said our new reels at the end of the 2.4 and 2 looked amazing. So yeah.
What's their time frame for the repair?
For the bulbs, if they have them, they'll be out. If not today, they'll be out tomorrow. Yeah, they might already be changed.
Anybody else with any public comment? Okay, with that, we'll go to item 11, meeting's adjourned.
Right.
I realize I have a new email address with the city, so should I email that to you?